I'm Kino MacGregor. Today we're going to take a look at Marichasana D. This is one of the most challenging gateway postures of the primary series of Ashtanga yoga. It involves a deep twist of the spine and a double rotation of the hip joints. One hip is externally rotated to have yourself in half lotus position, while the other hip is actually internally rotated to create a sense of stability and a base from which you twist on. Julia is going to be my model today, and we're going to take a look at that together. We'll look at some common pitfalls as well as how you can best enter the posture. The first thing you would want to start off with is taking the left leg into half lotus position. Now, if you don't have a solid half lotus position, you'll know that the posture is already perhaps out of your reach, and you'd want to go back and work on a nice, solid half lotus position. A couple of common pointers when you're working with the correct position of the foot for Marichasana D. You want the top of the foot to be as close to the hip crease as possible. So you don't want the foot too far over, and you also don't want it too far down. So if the foot is sliding all the way down, that's a little bit too low. So you would want to rotate the hip joint. Also, if you reach all the way over here, that's too far. Obviously, it's a little bit more like crossing the legs, not exactly like lotus position. So you want that top of the foot to grace the inner part of the hip crease. That'll give you a nice sense of stability. If your knee is floating off of the ground, we'll address that a little bit later, but you never want to tense or squeeze your knee together nor force it down to the ground. If your knee does reach the ground, that comes from an external rotation of the hip joint, keeping the knee soft and safe. Right? That's step one for Marichasana D. If you're working on this at home and you have tightness in the hips, this might be enough for you to try. If the half lotus position was relatively easy, we can go ahead and continue. Bending the opposite leg, taking that foot in to about the same position as Marichasana C. So that's going to be aligned to the outer edge of the hip joint, not all the way outside of the pelvis. You want to avoid going too wide, because then you have maybe a sense of a more solid foundation, but it's really just an illusion because it's a long way to reach around that leg. You also don't want it too close in, because that's going to compromise the stability in your half lotus. So you want that in a nice alignment with the outer edge of the hip joint, the ball and socket of the hip joint. Then to safely enter the posture, you're going to take your weight forward so that the knee rests on the ground. So all the weight of the posture is going to now be forward in the knee and forward in the foot. Having the knee planted firmly on the ground is going to prevent any injury in the knee. Suffice that you do not squeeze or tense the knee. You just lean forward, taking that opposite hip off of the ground, in this case the right hip off of the ground. Feeling a nice sense of stability in the posture, we suck in the belly, and then we inhale to lift up and over, and then we exhale, twisting by starting and reaching all the way down deep inside of the pelvis. Again, a lot of people like to lean back, but the trick is to keep the body as close to the thigh as possible. So we bend deep inside of the hip joint and we lift the spine all the way up and over. This is the first step of the posture. If you're new to the posture, you may choose actually just to stop here, taking 5 breaths, letting the twist happen all through the spine. So this is a wonderful intermediary step. If you feel stable and you feel like all of the weight is moving forward and you're able to support yourself in the posture, the next step is to, keeping the shoulder contact with the knee, spiral the arm around, right? There's a moment right around the shin where you'll feel like the fingers get stuck. So we'll just do that one more time, right? Keeping the contact, the shoulder to the knee, you'll find a point where if the fingers get stuck, we want to find and wiggle and lift them all the way over, right? You might have to go a little bit more narrow. Just use your fingers and find them. Now the key to this posture, just like Marichasana C, is that once this hand is all the way bound, it stops working. You don't need to reach with this hand anymore. The reach has to come as you exhale all the way around, right? So you're actually reaching with the opposite shoulder, and you'll notice that the shoulders are rotating in 2 different directions. We have one shoulder rotating down and around the knee, and the other shoulder rotating back, so the shoulder blade drops actively down the back. If possible, you're clasping your wrists, right? Then you'll take the fingers and reach them forward, holding onto the shin. Nice long breathing, sucking in the belly, feeling the sense of length in the posture. Be careful not to lift too much out through the top of the head or you'll twist yourself off of the posture. Always keep that opposite shoulder rotating down the back, long and deep in the posture. After 5 breaths, you want to release yourself all the way down And we'll go ahead and give the other side a try, just so you can see both movements in the hip joint. So remember, the first starting point is that opposite leg in half lotus position. So the place we're going to have the leg in half lotus position is the top of the foot gracing the hip crease. All right? Then you're standing up the opposite leg, bringing that deep into the hip joint, and then transferring the weight forward, letting the opposite sit bone from the half lotus position, in this case the left sitting bone, rise off of the ground. It's most important that the knee is down, so we have to keep the knee down in order to prevent it from having injury. Remember not to squeeze or tense your knee. Finding that sense of stability, then remember to initiate the twist by sucking in the belly and lifting the whole spine over to the side so we reach all the way over. You notice she's not rounding or only twisting from the upper back, but that lift comes all the way from deep inside of the pelvis. Then, bringing the shoulder close to the knee, we reach down. For some of you who may have a hard time even crossing the shoulder to the knee, a great intermediary step is just to hug the knee into the chest, making it try to come as close as possible. That intermediary step, if you can't reach the torso across the knee, is a great place to stop. If after 5 breaths there you feel it might be possible, slide the arm all the way over. Make sure that motion comes all the way from the pelvis. Then once you feel a sense of stability, spiral the hand around, reaching all the way over. Keep the shoulder rotating around the left knee, and then this hand stops working. Now it starts time for the left hand to reach around, exhaling, letting the left shoulder blade drop down the back. So you can see 2 opposite motions in the shoulder girdle. The left shoulder blade dropping down the back while the right shoulder reaches forward to keep the bind around the right knee. It's very important that the spine lifts up and out of the pelvis so we're not dumping weight into the lower back. This is one of the reasons we take the weight forward in the posture. If you have a high level of flexibility, which Julia has a very high level of flexibility, it might be possible for you to sit the back sit bone all the way down. So now you'll see that her pelvis and the back, both hips are planted firmly on the ground. This is only advised if you feel a sense of ease in the posture. You would still want to keep the weight moving forward and the opposite knee down. You'll know you're ready to try this when Marichasana D with the hip up feels like a walk in the park. Until then, you want to keep all of the weight forward and not even worry about that back sitting bone coming down. After 5 breaths, we release and jumping back. This has been Marichasana D. Hopefully you have some tips to try this at home. I'm Kino MacGregor and we're here at Miami Life Center.